A very pleasant day to you again. I am Kings Ojalo and I welcome you to a newspaper review here in First Next News Sports Accord. Thank you for being with me. With me on set is by the name Cassie Tony. It's good to have you, Cassie Tony.
Thank you so much, Kings.
I will be taking you through all newspapers within our country, Nigeria, and around the world. Sit back, relax while I put you through. Now we will be starting with First Daily Newspaper. On the First Daily Newspaper, we have JAMB warns against NIN abuse as 2026 UTME opens January 26. That is on the top of the First Daily Newspaper. Boldly written, kidnap outrage, stop PR, fix insecurity. PDP slams Tinubu over 163 adopted worshippers. Police debunk reports. Still on that newspaper platform, Rivers APC launches e-registration, that is electronic registration, target 6 million new members. Now moving to the next newspaper platform, which is the Nation newspaper. On the Nation newspaper, we have why PDP secretariat remains locked by FCT police. Still on that, we have CBN bank raised lending to Fame's household in Q4 2025. You find that in page 3 of that newspaper platform. Now moving on that same newspaper platform, alleged terror financing, DSS arrest ex-AGF Malami. Now still on that, we have Sanwo-Olu signs 4.4 trillion naira 2026 budgets. Now moving to the next newspaper platform, on the Daily Independent, boldly written, IMF taps FG economic reforms, stabilizing naira fiscal position, projects Nigeria economy to grow by 4.4% in 2026. On the top of that newspaper platform, local contractors accuse federal government of using their funds for re-election. Now still on that, WEF 2026, Shetima commissions first ever Nigeria pavilion in Davos. Now, FG targets new national broadband plan with World Bank's $500 million. Moving to the next newspaper platform, which is the Leadership. On the Leadership newspaper, we have Governor Yusuf visit Tinubu may join APC on Tuesday or Wednesday. You find that in page 4. Police Commissioner Council Chair deny kidnap of worshippers in Kaduna Church. You find that in page 2. Moving ahead, 2027 Obasanjo in closed door meeting with IBB. You find that in page 7 of that newspaper platform. On the bottom line, Kanu family of 7 murder. Suspect father wants him executed if guilty. You find that in page 6. That is an interesting story there. Moving to the next newspaper platform, which is the Vanguard newspaper, boldly written, confession over alleged kidnap of 172 worshippers in 3 Kaduna churches. That is in page 5 of that newspaper platform. Now in page 16, on the top of that newspaper platform, there was never an Igbo call. That is coming from Rafael Obioha in page 16 of that newspaper platform. Now we also have in page 12, impeachment, Pandef reconciliation panel conducts Rivers engagement, return to Abuja. That is in page 12 of that newspaper. We also have DSS arrest Malami after release from Kuje Prison. Find that in page 24. Now, going to the bottom line, Kanu, Governor Yusuf meet Tinubu defeats to APC today. That is in page 27 of that newspaper platform. Moving to the next newspaper platform, which is the Nigeria Tribune. On the Nigeria Tribune, we have boldly written, DSS arrest Malami after release from Kuje Prison. Find that in page 4. On the top of that newspaper platform, we have IMF raises Nigeria 2026 growth forecast to 4.4%. Now, still on that, alleged adoption of 100 worshippers. No one was kidnapped in Kaduna, police LG chairman says. Now, moving ahead, still on that newspaper platform, alleged cyberbullying. Police files 6-count charge against Tone Onajubi. On that newspaper, Ekiti Pool, PDP, SDP missing. INEC clears APC, 11 others in final candidates Release. You find that in page 16 of that newspaper platform. Moving to the next newspaper, which is the Daily Sun newspaper. We have on the Daily Sun on the top, FCTA workers strike. Locks gate over pension exam failure, intimidation orders. Boldly written on that newspaper platform, we have pandemonium. Gunshot as contractors log out minister. You find that in page 26 of that newspaper platform. I will be handing over to my colleague Kasitoni to take off from here. Over to you, Kasitoni.
Thank you so much, Kings. Okay, moving to the next newspaper, The Punch. Boldly written, amnesty due. Outrage mounts as Katsina moves to release 70 bandits. On top of the newspaper, FG votes 10 million naira for Abuja runway after scrapping 532 billion naira deal. Still on top of the newspaper, Kano government meets Tinubu amid defection talks. You find that on page 10. Military discovers Boko Haram underground storage, fuel dump. You find that on page 3. Moving to the next newspaper, The Guardian. Boldly written, 1 year after, 50% telco tariff hike leaves operators happier, consumers frustrated. You find that on page 6. On top of the newspaper, PDP decries insecurity as Kaduna denies abduction of 163 worshippers. You find that on page 3. FG contractors on war path over 4 trillion naira debt. You find that on page 3. FCTA kicks as workers begin indefinite strike. You find that on page 26. Kano killing. Tinubu orders probe as state takes over prosecution. You find that on page 20. Still on the newspaper, APC closes in on Kano as state chairman hopeful of Yusuf defection. You find that on page 6. Moving to the next newspaper, The Matrix. Boldly written, fresh uproar trace deadly fuel scoping from fallen tankers. On top of the newspaper, WEF 2026, Shetima Commission first ever Nigerian pavilion in Davos. Dangote outlines new strategy to drive Africa's economy expansion, industrial development. Still in the newspaper, IMF upgrades Nigeria's 2026 growth projection to 4.4%. You find that on page 9. No kidnapping in Kaduna churches. Police, local officials debunk reports. You find that on page 2. Sound Olu signs 4.4 trillion naira Lagos budget for 2026. You find that on page 2. AFCON winner Senegal faces discipline from CAF after chaotic finals. You find that on page 25. Moving to the next newspaper, The Daily Monitor. Boldly written, IMF upgrades Nigeria's 2026 growth rate forecast to 4.4%. On top of the newspaper, police dismisses claims of mass church kidnapping in Kaduna. You find it on page 2. Again, contractors protest alleged debt backlog at Finance Minister headquarters. You find it on page 4. Alleged cyber stalking. DSS amends charge against Showore. You find it on page 2. Dangote outlines new strategy to drive Africa's economy expansion, industrial depth, development. Find that on page 5.
Thank you so much, Cassie.
Thank you, Kings.
That is all we have on this show on Newspaper Review here in First Next News. Many thanks for being with us. I am Kings Ujalo.
And I am Kasitoni.
It's a bye for now.